So, Chair Brown will just wait a few more minutes for
Okay, we
one
don't
more
have a-
member to join us.
Okay.
So Chair, you now have a quorum.
Great. Well, thank you. Good afternoon. It's Monday, July 24th. Welcome to the Commission on Equity Monthly Meeting. I will start the meeting by I'll accept a motion to approve the agenda, the previous meeting minutes and consent items.
I so move.
I second.
It's been moved and properly second. Do we have any discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, the agenda, previous meeting minutes and consent agenda items are approved. Public comments. Do we have anyone in the room who would like to, who have public comments to share? Okay,
If you have opportunity after the meeting, I kind of don't have anything to comment on. You just go from that, you know what I mean?
no, this is really the only opportunity to contribute. To share anything that is on your mind, period. So would you like to share now? Okay, well, thank you. All right. Do we have anyone on Zoom that would like to share with us that has a public comment?
Chair Brown, we have no attendees on Zoom and we did not receive any written public comment.
Okay, and no one on the phone.
That is correct, Chair.
All right, thank you. Then we'll move to our next item. That is our inspirational item by Vice Chair Annie Clay.
Okay, so the inspirational item often is about comes from some individual that will inspire us to in our work going forward. I have two little short ones that are actually more coming from particular cultures or places or groups of people. The first one's called an African prayer, and I don't know which country it's from or what tribe I can credit to, so I'm sorry about that. But it says, "Let us take care of the children, for they have a long way to go. Let us take care of the elders, for they have come a long way. Let us take care of those in between, for they are doing the work. Let us take care of ourselves, for we are also to be treasured." And then the other short one is an Arabic proverb. "Write the wrongs that are done to you in sand. Write the good things that happen on a piece of marble. Let go of all emotions such as resentment and retaliation, which diminish you, and hold on to the emotions such as gratitude and joy, which increase you."
Good, thank you, very good.
Great, Sandy. Thank you.
Okay. So this moves us, yes.
Chair, before we move on, do we have anyone who would like to take the inspirational item for August? Our next meeting is going to be on August 28th, and I would certainly appreciate a volunteer for the next inspirational item.
You on, Kim?
Sure, I will be happy to.
If not you, I would have. Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, great. So this moves us to our first business item. That is a public meeting portal overview, part 2. By Kelly Adams, Special Projects Administrator.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm Kelly Adams, your Special Projects Administrator in the Public Affairs Department. And at my last visit, we talked about implementing Civic Clerk, which the intent is to increase accessibility and transparency for our public meetings. And so your board view accounts are now active. So you now have access to your board view, which allows you to see just a few more features. It allows you to engage in electronic voting if you wish. And it allows you to make notes that are discoverable, but that are tied to your individual account. So I wanted to first pass out this flyer for you. And this just gets into a little bit of the granular, just the instructions for when you log in the first time. We just want to make sure that you have all the supports that you need for this system. So we're just talking about Civic Clerk and your board view account. And so there's some really simple instructions here for your first time login. If you need any help with this, please reach out to us. Please email me. Shannon, do we want to show the board view?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Do you want to walk them through, Kelly?
Yes, I can, but I'm not on that computer. Are you logged into that?
I am not logged on, but if you want to walk through the login, certainly can too. I think it's a good kind of way to show what this will look like from the login side. And while Kelly's setting that up, a couple of comments. So we also are going to have iPads in here available for advisory boards such as yourself to use during our meetings in the future. Although it will work with other iPads as well, so you don't need to bring one in, you don't need to use the ones here if you've already got one. But the idea would be that if you can come to the meetings, 5 minutes early, you can get logged into the iPads that are here. You'll have available to you all of the agendas as well as any notes that you may make from your home computer and be able to pull them up and have that notation. In addition, like Kelly mentioned, you'll be able to do online voting as well moving forward. So once we have items that come up in front of the commission, as an example, our consent items, you'll be able to vote electronically, and that way we can see what the vote is across all of the membership all at once. We've heard, sometimes it's hard or difficult to hear, individuals who are in the room and individuals who are on Zoom. And so this is one mechanism that will really help kind of expedite that process of you being able to select your vote in addition to being able to audio state what your vote is.
Okay, so in the second half of your instructions, it says accessing the board's portal. And so I have visited this website, lacywa.civicclerk.com/boardview. And I am going to, I am erasing your information, Shannon. I'm putting in my email. And then I will put in my password.
Are you sharing your screen?
No, but I will because
Oh,
that
okay.
And our password.
So you'll be able to determine your password. So the email that Kelly sent out has sent you that you have an account. And if your first time login, you should be able to set up your password. What I do want to make mention of is what we're about to take a look at from what Kelly is showing is not something that the general public will have access to. Again, this is just for advisory board members. However, all of the meeting materials that are provided here are provided through our online portal. So it just looks a little bit different and it allows you again as advisory board members to make some notations and items, bookmark some items. And then also when we're in a meeting, have the ability to vote electronically.
And so just for comparison, this is the public portal. So when you're at City of Lacey, right here on public meetings, you can click on this and you can see all of the public meetings. So right now we're in the live Commission on Equity meeting. All of this information is the same information that you'll see in your board's portal. So on your board's portal, you'll see all of the meetings that you have access to, which will be all the Commission on Equity meetings. I'm going to click here. And here's our agenda for tonight. We can access our PDF. We can access our PDF packet with all the attachments. And so I'm going to go here. If I click on an item, it tells me everything that we know about the item. Tells me if there's any attachments, and here I can make notes. It says private on these notes, but these are discoverable. So these are subject to Open Public Meeting Act and public records requests.
So just a question on that. Before the meeting, can we add things like I could
Yes.
put my inspirational thing in there?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it auto saves. And so what you'll want to do is while you're doing this, hello, so you see that it auto saved. And that's the point. The point is so that you can prepare for meetings and just have a one-stop shop for everything that you need. Here we can see any of the minutes that we have access to that have been published right now. This is my admin account, so there's nothing in there. Any notes that I made? Oh, here's that Commission on Equity note that I made that says, hello. And then the media. So I'm going to be careful about clicking on media. I don't want to access the live video and cause feedback right now.
Mhm.
So this is your board view. And actually, let's jump out so we don't do that. Do you have any questions? We're happy to walk through this. We're happy to provide support.
No, I just clicked on it briefly when I got the email, and it didn't take me through the login. I ended up with some items on the side of the screen that I can click on, so.
Did it look
that.
like that? So this
Yeah.
is the public portal.
Oh, okay, that's what it took me
Yeah.
to then. Okay, all right, yeah, I'll spend some time. to-
All the great information just packaged up in a different way without the ability to take notes or do any electronic voting.
Okay,
Did you get your like password and all that stuff yet, Chair Brown? Maybe. 'cause-
no, I'll do that.
Yeah, that.
I just briefly
Got
did
it.
it. Okay.
One other question, it looked like, we don't have access to other, like the city council?
No, you would access
notes
that
and
on
those
the
things, just
public portal.
ours.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that'd be consistent across all advisory boards. It's
Yeah.
what advisory board you're serving on.
yeah. Mhm.
But all of the
That's good.
information, again, that is provided in the rest of those
Agendas
meetings
and
are
stuff, yeah.
available on the public portal.
Great. If there's no more questions,
Good.
Well, I was able to log in and get a different password and access tonight's stuff through the civic. So it did work.
oh,
Mm,
wonderful.
And further down the agenda where we have links to the other equity tools, I couldn't get those to work, for those documents to come up, but I said I'll go back and deal with that later, but.
I would love to sit with you for 30 seconds after the meeting and just see what happens when you
Okay.
clicked that. That'd be
Okay.
great.
Great.
Thank you. All right, I'm gonna stop sharing.
So commissioners, again, we will be having iPads available here in the future for all of the advisory boards, and we're taking a phased approach with this process. So we are onboarding a few advisory boards every month as meetings come up. So you are one of the first advisory boards. So if there are questions or have any trouble, please don't hesitate to send Kelly an email, because we want to make sure we figure out whatever is going on, so it's becomes more seamless as we bring on more advisory board members to this process.
So we're the beta test case.
Planning Commission and Historical Board are also helping beta test. Yes,
And the city council.
yes, yeah.
Very good. Thank you, Kelly. So business item B, I'm looking forward to this one. Social services overview and Lacey Veteran Services overview. And we have three of you listed, so are you gonna lead it, Shannon?
Yeah, I'll start it off, but I do want to recognize that we've got a guest here, and that is Keith Looker, who is the manager for the Lacey Veteran Services Hub. And we also have Kelly Adams, who just did the previous presentation, who is helping with some of our social service programs. Over the course of the last year plus, we've been getting overviews from various departments on kind of what, city services are being provided, as well as kind of what the departments look like and what kind of internal functions are going on. And so this was one of the remaining departments that we had not yet discussed, was social services. And so what I'd like to do tonight is provide a brief overview of the city's social services. And certainly if there are topics that the commission would like to learn more information on, we can certainly bring that back to a future Commission on Equity meeting to do a deeper dive into. So I'll get started just with a pretty high level overview, and then I'm going to turn it over to Keith and Kelly to provide a more in-depth overview of the Lacey Veteran Services Hub, and then I'll wrap it up with just a kind of a recap of some of the social services the city provides. So really quickly, if you are looking in the city's budget, you will find the social services budget provided in section 3-17 to 3-19. And what this section provides you is, kind of each of the kind of accounts that the city is providing social services in, as well as a high level overview of the types of services and then what the goals are for the year. So the city provides social services in a number of ways, and the first one is through direct social services. The second one is through coordinated efforts with regional and community partners. The third is by providing funding to nonprofit and other governmental entities. And then the fourth kind of wing of this is by having advocacy at the state and federal level for human and social services. So as far as goals identified in the 2023 budget, I want to highlight, and I know I've highlighted this before in the past to the commission, that we have a new position, which is the Human Services Coordinator. And I do want to get into a little bit more detail a little bit later on in this presentation because we are actively recruiting for this position. But I want to kind of set the stage first of kind of what the kind of the job would be looking, wholly at what is provided by the city. It's also a goal to create a comprehensive social service plan, and this is tied directly with the Human Service Coordinator, to start efforts to become a community development block grant entitlement community. And then you can see I've checked off a couple of these bullet points to indicate that these are action items that the city has accomplished already in 2023, and that is to determine 2023 community development block grant projects, continue contract oversight of social services, including our home share and host home projects, which I'll get into some more detail, enhance our homeless services, work with regional partners on housing, hotel acquisition, and other homeless services. And this one, we did just celebrate the grand opening of Maple Court, which is an enhanced shelter, and we've got a little bit more information coming on that. Finalizing the homeless response plan, reviewing vacant properties and determining future uses, providing hazardous weather sheltering services, and enhancing accessibility and efficiencies at the Lacey Veteran Services Hub, which I know Keith on the latter part of the efficiencies is going to talk a little bit about during his presentation. We also have the work plan, which I know, the Commission on Equity has reviewed in the past. And for 2022 to 2024, social services are really under the goal of vibrant place to live, work, and play, and really under D and E. And D is finalize the city's homeless plan and enhance social services. And E, the strategy is to continue initiatives to advance indoor recreation and cultural opportunities. So when we're looking at some of the action items associated with those strategies, really, we're looking at the response plan. Like I mentioned, this is our homeless response plan, which continues to be ongoing, as well as our supportive housing acquisition. And so just highlighting again that a lot of the work identified here in the work plan is connected to opening up that enhanced shelter at Maple Court. Our social service plan, and this is really, again, going back to creating a comprehensive plan for the city's social services. And then finally, our community development block grant entitlement program. So as far as programs and services, so under affordable housing and homeless services, and I'm actually just going to provide a couple of examples. I want to just, iterate that this is not comprehensive overview. There are several programs that I'm not going to be talking about in much detail. But we did hire for affordable housing and homeless services a new housing coordinator position, and that position is now on board and working diligently for the city of Lacey. And one of the big successes, like I mentioned, was the opening of the Maple Court Enhanced Shelter. We also provide funding for early learning and at-risk youth services. We provide funding for senior services, and one of the programs right now that we are piloting, helping support which senior services is operating is the Home Share Program. And so this is a program where Senior Services tries to connect seniors with either having a home available for individuals to rent or having senior rent homes in existing housing. And so this can look a variety of ways based on, I guess, the needs of the seniors as well as the needs of the renters. And so they perform all of the matching and diligence, looking into the backgrounds, having kind of interviews and making sure that people are compatible, working out what that arrangement is going to look like. It's not always monetary. Sometimes it's by providing services such as like kinship or maybe doing some of house duties. And so each arrangement is different. But certainly, you know, it's a program aimed at keeping seniors in existing housing or finding housing for seniors in the community that is affordable. And then for veteran services, we've got the Lacey Veteran Services Hub. And so I'm going to stop my presentation momentarily, and I'm going to hand it over to the Lacey Veteran Services Hub, and we'll get into some more detail about some of the items that I've talked about. But I want to take a pause here and let Keith Looker, who is the manager of the hub, provide a little bit more background on the Lacey Veteran Services Hub. So Keith, let me get your recording or your presentation up here.
Little arrow there next to the gear in the upper right-hand corner. Way to the right. Oh, there we go.
Technology at its best. Well, good evening. So as it said, my name is Keith and I'm with the Lacey Veteran Services Hub. First of all, I'd like to thank you all for giving me the opportunity to come in here and tell you a little bit about the hub and what we do. A little background. So we actually started the hub in October of 2016. At that time, we realized that we have a large population. So there's about 32,000 veterans and about 9,000 active duty members and their families that live here in the Lacey area. And so it's very hard for them to get the services that they needed. So the city of Lacey decided what we want to do is try to consolidate all these service providers in one location. So it'd be easier for the veterans and their families to get those services that they needed. So they came out with the hub. So first, I'd like to start out with kind of the current services. So we currently have 9 different programs that we work with. We're kind of going to break it down. When we initially started, we had 5 services and we had about 20 service providers in the community that agreed to participate in the program when we started. But as time goes on, we keep identifying more needs in the community. We're always building and adding new programs or expanding those programs to make sure that we can meet the needs. So first one we're going to talk about is housing. This is one of the primary ones we started out with. We realized there was a large population of homeless veterans here in the community. And so we wanted to try to see if we can to get those individuals off the streets and in some kind of either supportive or permanent housing to kind of relieve that. So we work with several different programs. We actually have 2 grants through the VA. First one is they call the HUD-VASH. It's an agreement between the Housing and Urban Development and the VA. It's a supportive housing unit where they can provide individuals that do not have the ability to currently survive on their own, is that they get a housing voucher and then they're put into housing and the VA works with them to help get them back up on their feet. We have the supportive services for veteran families, which is another program, and they actually assist with rental assistance. So they get usually it's about 6 to 9 months that they'll help them pay the rent and get them into housing. And during that time frame, they work with them to get the financial stability that they can continue living there on their own afterwards. Rapid rehousing. So that is just basically a one-time grant for individuals that have the ability to work, they have a job, but they just have found themselves homeless and they can't afford the move-in cost because it's rather expensive right now to get into housing. So they'll go ahead and they'll pay that move-in cost for them, and that way they can get into housing and then go ahead and remain self-sufficient after that. We have a couple of transitional supportive housings. They're One is those transitions only usually has a 2-year time limit where supportive can be long-term. We have several here in the community and up in Pierce County, where basically it kind of works on the housing authority voucher. So they only pay a portion of their income and then they provide services. But unlike the VA program, these services are provided by through the community, through local nonprofits and organizations in the community. We work with Habitat for Humanity, so we assist low-income veterans they don't have the ability to purchase a home. They can apply for those programs and actually get a home ownership. The VA home loan certificate, so a veteran that served on active duty is eligible to qualify for a VA loans. We have one with that program. And then South Sound Military Communication or Community Partnership. This is actually a team of different organizations throughout the South Sound. And we meet to try to identify some of the housing problems in this community and figure out how we can improve the housing. A couple that weren't listed on here that I kind of briefly cover is, so we also work with the Thurston County Volunteer Legal Services. So they actually attend our housing meetings and they provide eviction protection for individuals that are about to become evicted, so they can help them and getting that eviction removed so we can keep them housed. So Family Support Center has a diversion program that will help keep them in the housing. And then the Partners in Prevention and Education has a prevention program where they can assist in paying past due rents to keep them in the housing. Oh, if you have any questions, feel free to stop me anywhere in the road here. So one of them I want to kind of cover on is one of our providers is the HUD-VASH, which is the VA and Housing Authority. So in 2018 to 2022, that team by itself was able to house 128 veterans. At that time, there was only one case manager that we had that worked on that program. Here now in 2023, they've housed 76. They have 12 that are in the process. We're going through the application process, try to get them into housing. And then outreach is that's individuals that we've done either screenings for that this team has done. So as currently right now, they actually are up to 3 case managers, and we're getting ready to hire on a 4th one. Is that we keep getting more and more support from the VA. Yes.
Commissioner Sawyer has her hand raised.
Oh. Yes, go
Yeah,
ahead.
thank you. So the veteran who's qualified to, is anyone served in the military, whether they retired or, you know, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't serve like 20 years to retire. Are they considered veteran and be able to qualify for this service?
Yes, they are. So the qualify for the HUD-VASH program, so you have to be eligible for VA healthcare, whether that's due to a disability or they just approve you for VA healthcare, then you can get into that program. The supportive services for veteran families is you have to have anything other than a dishonorable discharge. One of the things we do is we kind of layer different services that we want to make sure that any veteran, no matter what their character of discharge is, that we're able to provide those services. That's why we use some of those other programs is, you know, if they don't qualify for a VA grant, that we work with local nonprofits and organizations in the community to make sure that we provide that housing support. That's a good question.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, I have a question. When you say a veteran housed, does that include wraparound services? So if they were homeless but they had a substance abuse problem or some other issues, when you house them, does that come with a packet of wraparound services that may be coordinated through the VA or whatever?
So it depends on the grant. So if it's one of the VA grants, so it's the HUD-VASH and the VA, actually their case managers manage those wraparound services. The SFVF program, the Catholic Community Services runs that. And so they provide them the transitional supportive housing, the individuals that actually run those homes, which is Catholic Community Services and Lehigh Low Income Housing Institute. They manage those services. Some of the rapid rehousing that we do is we, you know, usually just need that. So they're always, you know, we always work with them through the hub to make sure that they're providing those services. It's because we never have a veteran that comes in and just have one problem. Normally it's, so we're always having them come back and, you know, we basically work with them as they come through here. So there's always somebody kind of following them along to make sure that they need that assistance. Some of them, just kind of fell on bad times and they just need a hand up and then they're good. And so they're pretty easy to work with.
Do you have someone or group that seeks out veterans, let's say for this homeless camp, we have the large homeless area? Do we have someone that goes in looking for veterans to offer veterans services apart from just going through one by one, but asking and seeking out veterans?
Yeah, so we partnered with the Thurston County Housing Department and the organizations go out there and they have our flyers. So we personally don't, but we've actually given that information to the organizations that go into the camp because they're, they're trusted in there and already have that rapport built. And so they work with them to identify those individuals and have them come out to talk to us. So.
Anyone else?
Did you have a comment? I just wanted to say, in interviewing social services providers in the region, we are known, if you encounter a veteran, they reach out to the hub. They know to reach out to the hub. So that's a pretty common understanding among nonprofits and the government agencies in Thurston County.
Okay, very good.
And commissioners, you've highlighted already kind of with your questions of, well, who do you work with and who do you provide services? And it's confusing, right? With what program will, work with what individual at what time. And so that's one of the really good benefits of the Lacey Veteran Services Hub is it's that conduit to getting a lot of services provided by other organizations of knowing, hey, you come into the hub, we know, what types of social services, and it could be beyond housing too. I mean, I know Keith's going to get into some more, but just talking about being able to connect people to the services they need based on where they are.
And one of the benefits that we found out is that by consolidating them all into one building is that we got to know each other. So we built relationships, and so all the individuals from different organizations, they see each other all the time. And so, if someone comes up and needs something, we can do that warm handoff because we know what the other providers, what services they can help out with. So, so next one is our nutrition program. So we are actually a satellite location of the Thurston County Food Bank. We give food out 5 days a week. That is not a veterans program, so everybody walks in the door and asks for food, and we'll give them a bag. Just the service we provide. And then we also work with DSHS so we can assist individuals in doing the applications for both the TANF program and the SNAP program for EBT cards. And then our third one is food insecurity grants. So I think one of the challenges we have on the nutrition side is that, as everybody knows, housing prices and cost of living has gone up drastically here. So a lot of families are having to decide where they're going to skimp on their bills. And a lot of times it turns out that nutrition is one of them. So either the parents aren't eating or the kids aren't getting an opportunity to eat. And so we've actually reached out to different organizations to see if we can assist with that. So two of them that we currently work with is the Bob Woodruff Foundation and the Lions Club. So Bob Woodruff Foundation has given us $55,000 in grants that we use, and we purchase food cards. And then so when we identify families or families come in and need, kind of assistance, we'll give them food cards so they go ahead and purchase additional food. And then the Lions Club has also been a big donator to us to help us in this program. And so as you can see, between the two programs, we probably did about 530 veterans families that we've been able to help in getting food cards. And
I have a question for you.
yes.
Do you know if the churches are tied in with you all as far as food programs? Because I know my church, on Saturdays, they have, food, people come in, they can give to them. Are they a part of this big group or the individual churches?
So there is
Secure their
a
own.
satellite location. We have a list of all the satellite locations. Individual churches is normal. We'll just send, if somebody comes in looking for assistance, we'll go ahead and provide them with the ones that we know of in the community.
Okay.
So if you had one, you had an extra resource, we're always looking to consolidate that list so individuals come in. Some of that direction there. So. Hey, healthcare. So this is our next one. So this is actually like a two-sided. So we assist the veterans in getting into healthcare, and then we also have a mental health side associated with that. So if they're eligible for VA healthcare, we'll assist them in that process of getting enrolled in that. The VA is a long-term healthcare program. And so they qualify for those services. We can help them get into that service also. CHAMP VA, so that's a civilian health and medical program. So this is actually a health insurance for family members. So if a veteran is 100% disabled, that the VA will provide healthcare for the whole family for them. Apple Health, so if you don't qualify for any of these programs, we always work with HCA to go ahead and get them enrolled in Apple Health and make sure they have some kind of healthcare. The ETF sponsorship, this is part of our suicide prevention, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And so this is an opportunity for individuals that are getting out of the military, is they can request to have somebody in the location that they're going to link up with them and kind of assist them in that process as they move into the Washington area here to help them, find a place to live, get a job and all that. As part of that, trying to counter the high rate of suicides that we have, the young generation of people transitioning out of the military. Mental health counseling. So we have a VA vet center here, which does combat veterans can receive care for have PTSD. Any veteran who's suffering from military sexual trauma can receive counseling there, and active duty members can receive counseling there. And then we also partner with different organizations throughout the community that provide mental health. So we make sure that everyone who needs those kind of services that we can provide them, get them linked up with that. And then of course, with SSMCP, we'll also work with them in identifying some of the needs in the community to make sure that there's ample health care for those that would need it. Okay, so this is the vet center here. So they're actually one of the original original businesses that was inside the hub. As you can see, they were pretty much steady at about just over 1,700 appointments they were doing. Here in 22, that number jumped. So they used to have one full-time and one half-time counselor there, and then they moved up to two. Right now we have two full-time and two half-time counselors that are coming in there. And probably the only reason they haven't bumped up to three by now is the hiring process. And so they're kind of short on counselors, so they have to share them with the Tacoma Vet Center, which are actually an outstation for. But I imagine here in the near future, we'll probably have three or maybe four, and this could easily become a standalone vet center. So we just kind of have that kind of need here in the community for mental health services. Education. So there are several different programs to the VA that individuals can go to school. So the Forever GI Bill was kind of like the GI Bill they had from the Vietnam era. So they give them like 36 months to go to school. Vocational rehabilitation education. This is a separate VA program. If you had a VA disability and you wanted to go back to work, because they would provide opportunity for you to go back and work on your education to get you back into employment. Chapter 35, that is was an education grant for family members, for veterans that are 100% disabled, because their family are qualified to go back to school. And then Washington State has a vocational rehabilitation program, which is a state program that any individual in the state of Washington that has a disability can apply to get paid to go back to school for employment. And then we work with several of the private universities that have special grants, such for that. Some of the challenges we had on the education side is, even though these programs have been around for a long time, is a lot of the veterans when they get out are not aware that they're eligible for these programs. And so we've had several that have come in and actually have been paying to go to college when they had the ability to have it paid for. So they're putting themselves in debt. And then the vocational rehabilitation education program. Probably the biggest challenge we have is if you're diagnosed with a mental health illness, then there's kind of some screenings you have to go through, because that is a go back to work education program. So, they have to be able to check off the box and say, when you finish your education, that you will be able to go back and gain employment. Brings us to our next one, employment. So of course, we help everyone get into jobs much as we can. So we have WorkSource, which is a state office. So we have a couple of representatives come down and assist in resumes and getting them their applications in to get them employed. We also work with the Department of Labor, has an Employment Navigator Partnership Program. So this is a program where we actually receive referrals from any military individual within the world that wants to come back to the Washington area, is looking for assistance in employment, is that they'll be referred to us. And then we work with the Goodwill of Olympics and USO Transition Team, which both of them provide specialized training and certifications for individuals that would want to go back into work. So our biggest challenge here is that since we signed the agreement with the Department of Labor, we actually have now become an international organization, so we do receive quite a few referrals, and so we're working with individuals in Asia and Europe and throughout the United States that when they get out, they want to come back in this area, so we're assisting them with that transition. Get back in here. Here's our WorkSource. So this is our numbers from, so I have one WorkSource employee that's been running this program out of our office full time. As you can see, the number of people employed and the amount of money he's brought in through employment back into our community here. So every year it's kind of gone up some. We went down a little bit during COVID, but now we're back up. And so far, just the first 5 months of the year, we have put 16 people back into work here in that local community here. You have a question?
Oh, no.
Okay. VA benefits. So this is probably one of our big programs here. So we have veteran service officers that come in, provide assistance with VA claims. Actually have from the American Legion, the VFW, and the Veterans of Foreign Wars will come in here with claims and pensions, survivor benefits, and aid and attendance. So this is probably our biggest program. We have more people come in, especially since some of the new legislation has come out and has expanded kind of those services. So one of the challenges we had to this is we're seeing a growing population, elderly population. Here's so we have about half of our veterans in this community are either World War II, Korean, or Vietnam. And so we're having some issues where they needed assisted living. So getting those resources, which is a big problem throughout the community here, I'm sure. And survivors benefits, as the veterans are now starting to pass, is making sure that their spouses and families are being taken care of in that. So this is some highlights from this program here. So we have last 3 years on 2020 between veteran services, these providers, as they were able to bring about $2 million back into our economy here. And for the last 2 years, it's about $2.5 million every year as the money has gone back into veterans so that they get to spend in this community. Financial, we have part of our financial, we actually have a financial assistance and a financial management program. So we can provide both services. So in the state of Washington, by state laws, every county has to set aside a portion of the property tax for a assistance fund to help out veterans. And so in Thurston County, that fund is run from the hub here. And then we also work with some different organizations in the community. Support the Enlisted Project is one that actually provides financial assistance to enlisted active duty soldiers, and then recent veterans can apply to get funding for that. Majority of it goes for past due bills, rent, utilities, car repairs, or things like that. And then of course we receive local donations from several individuals in the community to kind of help pay some of those services. So what some of the challenges we have on the financial side is there are some things that just aren't paid for by these organizations. So in some cases, they will repair car repairs if you need a vehicle to go to employment. But if it's someone who doesn't actually, it isn't working, they just probably need that car to go to get food or things like that. There's not really a program that covers that. And in most cases, if it's something to do with legal, so they had a fine or something they had to pay as past dues, they won't pay that. And then, if they owed an apartment money, there's not really a program that would pay that for past due, which is a big stop for individuals getting into housing. You know, that or an eviction will prevent them from going into housing. For the County Veteran Assistance Fund, we can see the numbers we broke down. Like I said, we had a little breakdown during the COVID where it kind of went down, but now it's picking back up again that there's more and more individuals are coming in seeking financial assistance. And that also is a one person that kind of runs that for the county also. Any questions? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I had a question in the medical side. So I don't know, I found that TRICARE and the Medicare and stuff like that doesn't care dental care. So how's the dental care being served? I mean, do you provide information on that? Is there some sort of a network that they could use?
So the VA provides, certain individuals do qualify for dental care through the VA itself. They really don't have a program for families at all, for veteran families. So yeah, that's kind of a hard one. For low income, we usually send majority of them down to Union Gospel Mission has a dental eye clinic downtown Olympia. Is that we go ahead and send referrals down there that they can get the care needed for free. There's a program for homeless veterans that they can get free dental care. But majority of us will end up having to pay through some kind of insurance program to get that. So there's not really anything special for veterans in the community that help pay for that.
Yeah, that's what I find, and it's pretty expensive, and it'll be great to have some sort of a support or resource that is little more than what we have now.
Yeah, dental and optical are really hard ones to kind of crack that nut and get those services provided in the community. So. You had a question?
I was gonna hold my question until you finish. Have you finished?
No, you ask me.
Okay, those are some terrific services that you're talking about on the resources that's provided. My question was, to what extent do you have the participation of veterans of color? Education, employment, housing, all those various categories of services, veterans of color. There's a lot of those in the community.
Yes, there is. And so I don't actually have numbers with me tonight. So we, as part of our intake is, there's certain questions about the specifics that, we could probably kind of break that down. So we do have a large population. It kind of depends on the services. Usually the majority of the homeless come in are not people of color. We do have some that come in that kind of meet that qualification. VA benefits, I'd have to kind of crunch numbers to say, how many out of each one of those services, but we do have a good mix. I said, well, we have a very good open door policy. Everybody comes in, we try to be as open for services and provide services as best we can. And so,
So as an equity commission, those are the kinds of things, we're interested in. How can the outreach help be provided? Can we help with communications? But, depending on what the numbers crunch shows, where we can help you identify, well, what's the holdback? What's the barrier? What's the whatever? If it appears as though there seems to be adequate participation across the board, that's excellent. But from an equity position, without some data and some numbers, we don't know, because in the communities we work with and deal with, we have some sense of those stories we hear. And the more we can understand about the services of the hub, the better we can advocate, help direct them to the services you're providing. But I would be interested, and I think the rest of my fellow commissioners, in some of the numbers and how that breaks out, if you do that and disaggregate it on that intake process.
yeah, we can provide that. That'd be great. But the only thing that kind of pops to mind that we don't is probably the housing. I'm not really sure why. So we do have a portion that, or people of color or, LGBTQ that come in for those services. But majority of them seem to be kind of 50, 45 to 65 kind of white males. So not sure what the actual, for the county-wide, how that turns out as numbers, is what percentage of that is, but all the other, they're very active in all the other services. Usually, the biggest one is VA benefits. Is there's large, all the veterans come in the community here for that, so. But I will provide that for you.
So Commissioner Jackson, we will certainly take a look at that and get some more information in front of the commission. I do want to recognize though that some of the data too, we won't have access
Right.
to, but
Right.
we will certainly do our best and take a look at it and get another report out to the commission.
Great, thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
If you were worried about demographics other than race, would you be willing to look at like say secondary disabilities that may or may not influence accessibility to your programs instead of just like race?
So we track like the standard stuff, so. Like I said, so we provide services to everybody, so I don't know, you mean like a service connected or non-service connected disability or?
Oh, like any other kind of demographics, like she was interested in how many Black people or people of color were getting served, like maybe, it could be that there's not very many Black people or something getting served, but it might not be because of their race. It might be because of something else and they just happen to be Black.
Right.
So I was just wondering if you would be willing to track other demographics other than just race, since you would be willing to. I mean, for me personally, you know what I mean? I'm more interested in including people whose things might not just be on their skin, especially when you're talking about veterans. There might be, PTSD. That's the reason why you're not getting the service, and it has nothing to do with your race. So there, I mean, in that same way, I was just wondering, like, what other kind of demographics you would be willing to track, like secondary disabilities that might also influence access to care.
Right. Yeah, so we track, like I said, a lot of the information that we already track. Sometimes it's dependent on what the individual is willing to give us. So even though on applications, it's like sexual orientation, race, we don't ask about religion, whether or not you get service connected disability or not. But a lot of times, sometimes they just say, I'm not going to answer that question. And so we always provide services no matter what. So yeah, if there's other items that we could track, but like I said, once again, it's all dependent on.
Do you track any other items? Like you said, you track race and what else?
Sexual orientation, whether identify as a male, female, all that.
Right,
There. We don't do religion, but it's kind of like the standard federal, all the information, and the county has a size of family, income levels, stuff like that. But what their individuals are willing to provide us as far as numbers, but.
Keith, is it okay to add? It's all self-reported. So the process is a client comes in to the service hub and there is a device there that they can add information or someone there to help them put that information into the device. But if they self-select to not report something, especially if they're in crisis or they're upset in the moment, that might not get reported.
Right.
And I think just to take that a step further, that is the case too. And if they're seeing providers too, the providers themselves might have additional information, but that is not going to be something that would be available for the Lacey Veteran Services Hub. That would be between them and the provider as well.
And do you find that some, say, veterans come with an advocate, someone to bring them in to help them navigate?
So in the case of that, it usually happens, it's usually a homeless individual is overcome with an advocate that's kind of walking them through the system to help getting back into housing, or mental health is usually that a counselor. Other than that, a lot of times it's just, they just come in and just contact us and looking for some kind of services.
Okay. And this is for the overall presentation. Do we have demographics on the homeless population? I'm sure we do, but is it primarily white males, 40 years old, or, that just visually, I see almost 100%, white male and females.
So commissioners, every year there is a point in time count that is done and that has information, and we can certainly send out the latest point in count to all of you so you can take a look at it. And it does ask similar questions, but like Kelly pointed out, not all of the questions I believe need to be answered. So I'll certainly send out a copy of the latest point in time count to the commission.
Not the easiest anything, but so what I've noticed is a lot of veterans don't want to be seen. So they, they're hiding in the woods, and so, we'll link up with them, start helping them, but you would never, I've never seen them out on the street corner or one of these camps, is they just find some small place in the woods and kind of hide out in there and just come out when they need something. And so a lot of the homeless are hidden. It's not really as noticeable as the guys along the I-5 corridor that you see all the time.
Yeah, but I'm sure you find that there are homeless veterans who are receiving a check every month.
Yes.
They're getting money, they have, asked money. But they've chosen, that homeless life, or they don't trust enough to, get regular housing and live with the group and all. Plus other agencies that I've worked with and working with homeless shelters and all, we find that there are lots of veterans there that say, oh yeah, I get a check every month. I have money, but I don't trust the system enough to really allow them to provide for me. I choose to live this way. And that makes it so very difficult to get them all their services.
Yes, yeah. And there's some that have other issues, either mental health or addictions that kind of takes up their money.
Yeah.
But some just like that, just kind of like the lifestyle, I guess. Okay, so one of the highlights is, so the VA just actually provided a grant. So Northwest Justice Project just got an opportunity to share part of that grant. So they're actually going to be using that funding to bring on additional attorneys to kind of assist with the legal assistance throughout the state here.
Along that line, do you run into people who have served, came back from their service and are facing deportation? Because they're not citizens, but they have served in
So
the
I've not
military.
actually seen that here.
Haven't,
Usually military service pretty much guarantees.
Right.
well, apparently not, but.
I think there's a process you have to go through, but
Yeah, if you have,
You haven't seen it. Okay.
if you don't have an honorable discharge, that could impact it. If you have a low level discharge.
I'll
But
look into it
otherwise,
more.
normally you get your green card.
Something in the news about a guy that was, but I don't know if he was historically.
I say, so we've never had that incidents come up at the hub yet so far since we've been open, so. Yeah, so next one is transportation. So actually, we received 2 vans through Intercity Transit that were granted to us to provide transportation. So we currently provide door-to-door service to any medical appointment within Thurston County or up to the VA hospital in American Lake. And so what's kind of unique about this is, so there's a couple like Intercity Transit has dial lift. We do medical appointments in the county. So we are able to expand that kind of service beyond that. And we usually don't need as much time to. So usually if you're a veteran and you ask for services, is we'll go ahead and schedule that as long as we have the availability of a van and a driver to do that. So one of the challenges we have is we're getting a lot of requests that they want us to expand that service. They include going on to JBLM and up to Seattle to those services. In some cases, a lot of the examinations they do with the VA, they contract out in Tacoma and other areas. And currently, we just don't have the drivers and ability to do that. So it's something we probably will work on in the future to expand that. Here's kind of the numbers you can see every year, the number of veterans that we actually transport to these medical appointments. Our hot topics, they had thrown my picture in here. So these are the kind of things, the hot topics that we're currently working on at the hub. So veteran and active duty suicide. Suicide has been a problem across the community for a long time. It seems that those numbers are increasing, and so we're working to try to reduce those numbers. So we work with several organizations. And our goal is to try to catch them before they go into crisis. So identifying individuals that have housing, financial, drug addiction problems, and kind of getting them, because it's kind of hard once they get into crisis to kind of save them. So we want to try to make sure that we reach out and catch them before they get to that point. Food insecurity, we already talked about that. There's a lot of families out here that aren't getting enough to eat, so we're working to work with that. Housing shortage. The housing shortage has been a problem across the board. It's gotten worse since I've been here, and trying to find housing, just even affordable housing. Fortunately, there is an uptick in housing being developed. So one of the programs we work with is with senior housing, and I just found out that they approved, they're gonna open up a hotel there in Tumwater as a senior housing for individuals. So one of the problems having that, especially with people on active duty, when they move in the area, is that while they're looking to get in, they usually stay in a hotel for short periods of time because of the housing shortages, that they're not able to do that. And so eventually over time, they can't afford to stay in the hotels any longer. And so we're finding more and more families are living in their cars. Even though they're getting a paycheck, they just can't find a place to live. They can't afford to stay in a hotel. So we're kind of working to resolve that
These are
issue.
active duty families?
Yes. Yep. Yeah, because easily 60, 90 days, try to find a place to stay if you're lucky, so. Thurston County Lead, so we do work with a diversion program, so we identify individuals in the community, they either have drug or alcohol or mental health, and try to provide them a diversion option instead of incarceration. So it's been a very successful program here in the community. And then human trafficking, so we work with the Innovations, the Human Trafficking Commission, to try to resolve some of the issues here in our community, and identifying those individuals and getting them the services that they need and the help they need to kind of get them off the streets. Community involvement. So right now I have over 138, 135 partners. Actually, I have 138 right now. Throughout the community, like I said, so we try to, try to layer these services and make sure everybody can get the help that they need. So we try to bring in as many services that we can. Donations for 2022. So we received donations from the Bob Woodruff Foundation, the Dutch Brothers, did a Veterans Day coffee drive, provide funding for us, and Panorama also did a Veterans Day. So the funding we receive from donations, because we're actually funded by the city of Lacey for the most part, and receive some fundings from Thurston County, is we can use all that donations directly for veteran services. And so all that money gets turned right around, and we're either helping with getting people into housing or with financial assistance, whatever the needs are. So we're always thankful for the community and all the support that they give us. As far as that, so we actually have one full-time employee, one part-time employee who works there. The whole front staff is all volunteers. So we rely a lot on the community to kind of help us keep the doors open. And then some of our service providers, like all of our veteran service officers, are volunteers, and the others kind of work for other organizations. But as far as volunteers, you can see in 2022, we had just over 8,000 volunteer hours of community members that worked in the house.
On one of the previous slides, you had 135 partners, or
Yes,
what do you call partners?
yeah, partners, yes.
How diverse is that group? By diverse, I mean young, old, male, female, when we think in terms of the diversity of the veterans out there, we're trying to help. They sometimes will respond to someone they can relate to, a young veteran with a young person, an older person with an older person, or what's the diversity of those 135?
So we try to bring, so some of them are state, some are federal government, some are state, some are county, a lot of them are nonprofits. So we do bring in different organizations. So we work with Minority Vets, Washington, or Disability Rights Washington as one of our partners, is always kind of reaching out to make sure Peer Olympia, so that individuals that they can actually link up with somebody who's actually been down the road that they're on. So, yeah, it just kind of depends on the organization and who they bring in. So it's, it's the diversity of, different
You get
ages.
who you get.
Yeah, but they're a pretty, diverse group. There's, in this community here, we have a lot of, different organizations that kind of focus on certain areas. And so we try to make sure we bring everybody on board that can assist. So people, we want people to feel comfortable when they walk in the door and, when they're asking for help, that we have the right people there to help them out. So.
And what about your volunteers? How do you search out your volunteers, seek out your volunteers if somebody wanted to do something?
So I actually have I have a volunteer coordinator who actually kind of works on that. So I got the outreach. We're always asking individuals to come in. We work with different volunteer organizations, the Red Cross and a couple in the community that have a database of volunteers. But a lot of times it's people who just either knew somebody who came in to get services, or they came in for services themselves and say, hey, I want to give back to the community. Some of them are actually people that we've housed back when we first opened up, and they said, hey, I appreciate what you did and I want to give back. And so they just come in and help out in the community. But
Nice.
pretty easy process. If you like to volunteer, we can get you an application. That's
So on that, Keith, always looking for volunteers, number one, and we've got volunteer applications at the hub. Commissioner Jackson, just to go back to your question, we do have the list of the 100 and now 38 providers. And I just want to make note that, some providers are at the hub, when the hub is open. Other providers are only there when they're providing like a limited number of services. So as an example, I know Keith, in the past, we've worked with a organization that does art, and their kind of services, their programs are only every couple of months. And so it looks a little bit differently based on, what organization and what that partnership looks like.
I was just thinking in terms of, I see a few more women on the streets. The category of homeless. I don't know if they're veterans or what, but I would think that they would be responsive to some other woman approaching them on the street offering these services. When I asked about the diversity of the, I wasn't thinking so much of race, but that's included, but other factors as well, LGBTQ, male, female, young, old, and that diversity of veterans out there and how they might respond differently with a peer kind of, so that was why I asked that question. And I know the services are out there, not in the hub all the time, but they're accessible on a referral basis when needed. Yeah, so that's what I was trying to get at.
right. So biggest problem we've had with female veterans is most of the time they will not identify as veterans. They figure that even though they served in the military, they don't acknowledge they're veterans. They don't seek out any veteran services or benefits. And so it's always kind of reaching out saying, hey, you do qualify and you are eligible to services, but it's always been an ongoing battle since I've been here. It's just that they don't think that they're veterans. They don't see themselves in that way. So trying to get them access to services. For most individuals going to social services, they are females for the most part. So you'll see that a lot of our counselors turn out to be female in there. So. But we have a good diversity of individuals that come in there and provide services there. So this here is our client appointments. So kind of going between 2021 and 2022. As you can see, we had a big jump in housing and the transportation, big leaps there. So in 2021, we had about 10,000 appointment hours that year. 2022, we're up to over 17,000. We normally average about 5,000 appointments a year now that we're increasing. One of the things that causes is, so we're always trying to provide more quality service to the veterans. And so what we're discovering, because the numbers were increasing, is that we're getting individuals waiting longer and longer for services. So in partnership with the city, we've actually done a process improvement project and brought in some technology and some different services to kind of reduce those wait times, so they're not waiting to get assistance while they're there. So. And here's actually a heat map. This kind of shows Thurston County where our clients kind of come from. As you can see, about 75% of our customers that come in are actually out of Thurston County. About 30, almost 38% of them are in the unincorporated areas. And then he kind of breaks it down with Lacey, Olympia, Tumwater, and then Yelm. So you see it's, it's a pretty wide array of individuals that come in throughout the whole county here for those services. And then subject to your questions, that's all I have for you guys tonight.
Well, one last question, with that screen you just showed, this is the Lacey Veterans Hub.
Yes,
So, but are you a regional service provider or just Lacey Veterans?
so we are,
Services might exist in other cities.
so that's kind of funny you should mention that. So initially, so we were started by the city of Lacey. They're the ones that picked up the ball. When they said, hey, we need some kind of service in Thurston County. Initially, we were looking at just focusing on Thurston County veterans and military members. But what we discovered is that these services just weren't provided anywhere. So we started having veterans were coming down from Bellingham, they were coming up from Vancouver, Alpha Motion Shores, and so we never turn a veteran away. So if they reach out or contact us, we provide assistance. You can see on the top there, so about 97% actually are in Washington State. And then the others are throughout the US or in different countries that have reached out and said, hey, we need assistance. And so like I said, we don't turn a veteran or family members away if they need help. And so we never, even though initially we're going to focus on Thurston County, and we do work with other counties to kind of help. So Pierce County has actually started up a hub. There's 2 up in King County right now. There's 1 in Spokane, and we're always working with the other counties because the best place to get services is in your hometown. It's not transporting to someone else's community to try to get help there. So.
I had a question about in the military, if somebody's gonna leave, there must be some sort of exit interview, resources, training,
Right.
getting them ready to go into the community. Do you have any impact on that? Like we're seeing problems that, financial, this and that. Do they not get a good, transitional training?
So yeah, so they do. It's kind of like being fed to you through a fire hose. But yes, they do. The problem is that every individual, they have things that are important to them.
Yeah.
So they may hear it, they may receive it in a briefing, but it just doesn't.
Okay, so you don't see that there's a problem there. It's just once they get out,
Yeah, they just-
overwhelmed with life.
Yeah. So the big one is, normally when you get out is that you don't receive your last paycheck because the Army has to close the books. So they tell you, you're probably not gonna get paid for 6 weeks. They tell people that, but they never listen. All of a sudden it's like, hey, I can't pay my bills because I don't have any money. My paycheck didn't come through. I said, well, they told you that. And so, those are individuals, so we have to help them out through that process there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
the military has a formal transition
Yeah, I
program.
would imagine.
And they used to have a time requirement where you have to start, it's like 9 months, and I don't know, it may be at 12, depending on your rank, to help you to address all these issues and prepare to transition out. They help you with your job search. They help you with all aspects of your life, family, and you name it. But once again, soldiers don't always follow through on that. They have their own ideas of what they want to do. So, but the programs are there.
It was good to hear that
Absolutely.
yeah.
So right now, they actually started about 24 months out in providing some kind of training. Biggest cause of that is that, so when you're kind of get out of the military, you're eligible for unemployment, and the Army has to pay for that unemployment. So they don't want to pay unemployment, so they do everything they can to try to make sure that you're kind of settled and you get out there.
Question on that.
Yes. Okay, we have one question here.
No, on the computer. I saw somebody.
Oh, so, is that Kim? Do you have a question?
No, it's Christine.
Christine?
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
not me.
Yeah, no, it's not really a question. It's just one of the issues that I know of with the transition planning is that when you're getting out of the military, they will send you back to wherever your home is. And if you're currently stationed in a different state, you're going to get assigned a transition counselor in that state, and then you're going to get shipped home, which could be across the country. And then you need a new transition person, and the military doesn't always communicate. And I think that's where a lot of that transition planning kind of falls through the cracks.
But if they elect to go back to the home state, I mean, we're from Alaska. And
But they won't pay for it
Yeah.
if you're not going back to where you were when you joined.
Yes, that's part of that ETS sponsorship, is so we give them an opportunity, they can request a sponsor an individual that they're going to. In some cases, they may not have been there for 10, 15 years. So they can actually have somebody who's on the ground in that area that can assist them as they transition. And the Department of Labor actually has quite a few employment personnel throughout the US right now that kind of assisting in them getting back into employment. So they're getting better at putting those resources together.
Okay. So,
That's all I have.
is that it?
That's it for me.
Any last questions or comments?
I have a question of Shannon, going back to what she presented.
And I've got a few more slides on my presentation, but I'd be happy to answer it or, okay, great.
You
Well,
might answer it, I don't need to answer it.
Okay. Well, thank you, Keith. I appreciate you providing an overview of the Lacey Veteran Services Hub, and I've got a few things jotted on down here that we'll follow up with. Number one, we'll take a look at the data and provide an overview of individuals served at the Lacey Veterans Services Hub, as well as the point in time count report from Thurston County, and then also a list of all of our partners at the Lacey Veterans Services Hub. Was there anything else that you all would like more information on? Great. Well, thank you again, Keith, and you're more than welcome to stay, or you can also head on out if you'd like to.
I'll stick around for it.
All right. All right, so going back to other social service programs, we just talked about the Lacey Veteran Services Hub. I do want to point out, I am showing a picture here from the Senior Services website. And so if you're interested in learning more information on the Senior Services Home Share program, that is a great place to get more information and how to get connected with that particular program that the city supports.
That's the slide I had a question on. So,
Okay, great.
on early learning and at-risk youth services, what's the city's connection to the youth population? I've heard some talk about a large early learning center that's being talked about adjacent to Nisqually Middle School. Early learning right on through complete early learning. Is this part of the early learning and at-risk youth services that we're talking about here in the city?
So in that particular project, so the short answer is no, there's a little bit of a disconnect there, but the city is a partner as part of that Early Childhood and Family Center project. And we are working with the North Thurston Public School District as well as the YMCA and other partners. What this is really pointing towards is some of the grants that the city provides. So as an example, the city has provided in the past grants for All Kids Win, which provides backpacks filled with supplies for students coming into future school years. And then also providing other facilities for school services. So for example, we do have a contract with the ESD for the facility here in Lacey.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. Other programs and services that the city of Lacey has supported again through grants or contracts or starting up programs. We've got food insecurity and nutrition services. I know Keith just went into quite a bit of detail on what's provided at the hub and the Thurston County Food Bank being a part of that. We also have funded the Lacey Food Bank and then also programs like Grub. Hazardous weather sheltering and services. One thing I want to make a note of again, new this year, we hired a sustainability coordinator who is really going to be taking the lead, taking a look at sustainability and responses moving forward. But we've also provided funding to Sacred Heart to run an auxiliary men's shelter during the winter. And then also we have provided our community center during extreme heat incidences here in the city. For substance and alcohol abuse and treatment services, one program that I wanted to highlight is one that we are looking actually and working with Homes First to get started here pretty soon, and that is going to be a clean and sober living house. So the city was provided funding from the state and then also is providing funding for the acquisition of a house so that we can, Homes First will operate kind of the facilities, and then we're looking for another nonprofit provider to provide services at the clean and sober living house.
A question.
Yeah.
At the at-risk youth, are they doing something about the homeless street youth as well?
So we do provide funding to organizations that deal with homeless youth.
Is there going to be some kind of housing? From what I understand, I think there's only one like youth housing type place in Thurston County, and probably somewhere on the west side of Olympia. Is there gonna be something looked at for over here in this area as well?
So, we are working with the Regional Housing Council on kind of, thinking about long-term projects and approaches. And so it's certainly going to be future conversations. Also provide funding for crime victim advocate services and dispute resolution services. Transitioning a little bit from kind of the grants and the social services, we also have community development block grant funding. And so community development block grant funding is to support community development activities. And in particular, this is outlined by federal law. So talking about neighborhood revitalization, economic development, and improved community facilities and services. And to have a project, you have to meet the HUD's national objective, and HUD is standing for Housing and Urban Development, their national objective. And that is that the projects must benefit, and it must meet one of these. Low and moderate income persons, aid in the prevention of elimination of slum or blight, or meet urgent community development needs. So the city of Lacey is part of what's called the Thurston County Consortium as of right now, which means that we join Thurston County. So unincorporated as well as some of the smaller cities. And then also the city of Tumwater. The city of Olympia has its own entitlement community program, which means that they receive funding directly from the federal government. The consortium also does that, but we are a group of municipalities and jurisdictions here in Thurston County. And so funding rotates in the consortium on a 3-year basis between the partners. So I've provided on table B on the left-hand side what that's looked like in previous years. So you can see Lacey is receiving funding this year in 2023. And prior to that in 2022, Thurston County and the South Cities received the funding. And then prior to that in 2021, Tumwater received the funding. And in 2024, in that 3-year cycle, Tumwater will also get the funding from the consortium. And when I say get the funding, I just want to make the distinction that the county receives the funding, but it's projects that are going to be eligible in those communities. And so Thurston County does act as the administrator of the program. What I'm showing here on the table, the graph to the right is community development block grant funding from 2013 to 2022, and just kind of highlighting at a very high level where funds have been expended in Lacey, Thurston County, and Tumwater. And so you can see through the last couple of cycles that the city of Lacey has put over $1 million towards affordable housing projects. This could be acquisition. This can also be repair. $1.3 million to community facilities. And a good example of a community facility was renovating where the Lacey Veteran Services Hub is now. That was a building that, I don't know if you all drove by the college campus, probably 5 years previously would look very different from what it looks like today. And then public services. So public services are typically grants to nonprofit providers, providing some of the services that we just talked about. And so what we've got here is just kind of a more detailed breakdown of each of the awards. So you can see that there are quite a bit of programs that have been funded. And just to kind of give a high level snapshot of the diversity of those programs, we have the Boys and Girls Club provided funding for homeless youth assistance to be able to access Boys and Girls Club programming. We've got the City of Lacey Veterans Hub expansion, like I mentioned, the project that really helped open up what is now the Lacey Veterans Services Hub. You've got programs like acquiring housing through Homes First with affordable housing rentals. You've got critical home repairs with Habitat for Humanity and projects with Thurston County Food Bank. So there has been a wide variety of projects funded when the city has been the jurisdiction designating what the funding is here in the community. So for 2023, we actually just completed the process of awarding our funding. And so the Board of County Commissioners actually took action on this last month. And so this has been finalized. But the goal of the Lacey City Council was to provide around 15% of the community development block grant funding to public services. 15% is the largest amount you can provide pursuant to federal law. And so the idea was to try to get close to that 15%. As you can see, it came out to about 14% provided to public services. And you can see the public services that were provided funding again were the Boys and Girls Club of Thurston County for the Lacey Club Scholarship for Youth Experiencing Homelessness, funding to Catholic Community Services for the Community Kitchen, funding to the Community Action Council of Lewis and Mason and Thurston counties for Monarch Children's Justice and Advocacy Center for child interviews, and then funding for senior services for the South Sound for the Home Share program that we talked about earlier. So the rest of the funding went to affordable housing. So around 86% of funding in this cycle for Lacey went to acquisition and repair of affordable housing. And the projects that were received funding included Foundation for the Challenged, and this is for a house for extremely low income individuals with intellectual and development disabilities. Funding to Homes First for acquiring housing for low and very low income persons. Funding for the Low Income Housing Institute, and this is to preserve a multifamily affordable housing project that is here in the city. And this particular unit houses individuals who are 40 to 50% of the AMI. And then funding was also provided to two organizations that provide for the preservation of existing affordable housing, and that is Rebuild Together Thurston County and South Puget Sound Habitat for Humanity. So again, about 86% of community development block grant funding per this cycle went to affordable housing. Transitioning away from community development block grant, unless there were any questions about community development block grant. Not seeing any. So going back to Maple Court Enhanced Shelter, we did just celebrate the opening of this shelter, and this has been something that has been worked on regionally. And this started, prior to the State Rights of Way Initiative, but really picked up steam with the State Rights of Way Initiative, and that's what the funding mechanism for acquiring and rehabilitating the hotel and turning it into an enhanced shelter. And so it converted a former hotel to serve people living on state property along rights of way here in Thurston County. That is the priority for this facility. It is going to have 118 fully furnished rooms for residents, and it'll also have 6 rooms for staff and case management offices. All of the units have a refrigerator, a microwave, TV, Wi-Fi, closet, private bath, and AC. And the entire building itself has sprinklers, an elevator, a laundry room, security cameras, and parking. And Lehigh, which is the Low Income Housing Institute, which we provided funding for the multiplex that I just mentioned in the previous slide with community development block grant funding, is providing the operations at the enhanced shelter, and that includes staff being on site 24/7 with case managers that also help provide services to residents. So Chair Brown, back to your question of providing kind of wraparound services within one place. This is a great example of doing what you just stated. And so individuals are being actively moved into Maple Court right now. And so I know OLLIMAP, which is one of the outreach organizations that Keith mentioned during his presentation, is working to get more individuals into the enhanced shelter at Maple Court.
Yeah, I think there was an article in the Olympian today, or somewhere I was reading, talking about the progress that's being made and also some of the challenges they're facing. So my question is, if I stop in, will they give me a tour of the facility, show me programs, give me a review?
Chair Brown, we can certainly ask about that. I know as part of the ribbon cutting ceremony, they were providing tours. I don't know if that is open to just community members at large, but we can certainly reach out and see if that could be a possibility.
The other feedback that I've been getting and others have mentioned to me has to do with the concern for uptick in crime in the Hawks Prairie area. So, and I saw that the sheriff commented that, yes, there's a plan to have a program for increased responses and patrols in the area, but it's gonna be something that's gonna naturally occur, that they'll have to develop a plan to address that over time.
So, Chair Brown, I will say that the hotel is in the city of Lacey, and so this is certainly something that the Lacey Police Department is certainly aware of. And that is a hotel that we had seen a significant number of calls coming prior to it being renovated.
Okay.
But what I do want to point out about Maple Court is that, like I said, Lehigh will be there 24/7. In addition to that, the site is secure. There is a fence that goes around the entire site. And there's also a community group that meets regularly to talk about issues that come up with the opening and continued operation of Maple Court. And so that is the Community Advisory Group. And I've got flyers here, actually. It's kind of a perfect segue that provides a little bit of information on Maple Court just generally, and then also Lehigh, and then also how you could get involved in the community action group as well.
Yeah, and we have, the businesses have those concerns in the area, and I know there's a challenge, in that area with, the theft, especially with Walmart and some of the retail stores that's really having some challenges. So they're just concerned with the potential uptick because of the people living there, but.
Yeah, and certainly welcome businesses to get involved in the community action group. And then also, I think another thing to highlight is that services are provided on site. In addition to services being provided, that includes food. So there is going to be food provided to all of the individuals staying there. All right, and I know a couple of these projects or programs here from the city, we've already gotten a kind of a high level overview from the Lacey Police Department and Chief Almada when he came to the Commission on Equity. But I do want to emphasize that this is part of the city's social services and human services, is having our community resource unit, which is our two-person Lacey Police Department crew, and they do proactive outreach to the houseless here in the community. And they work on connecting individuals to coordinated entry as well as other services that are in the community. And they are working around the city of Lacey 5 days a week. So if you see them, certainly say hi. We also have our mobile outreach team, which is a 4-person crisis response team. And this includes 2 peer specialists, as well as 2 case managers. And this is in partnership with Behavioral Health Resources. And they are in operation 7 days a week around the community. And so if you see them as well, certainly stop and say hi. The final prong of this was creating the rapid response team, which is a 2-person team housed in our public works. So if you remember, Scott Egger, our public works director, came and also mentioned this program as well. And they clean up abandoned encampments on public property. They also respond to other concerns of litter, debris, shopping carts, and graffiti in the community. So if you see them as well, certainly stop and say hello. And then to kind of wrap up our social services, I do want to take a moment because we are actively recruiting for this position and to get the word out. But the city of Lacey has a new position, which is our human services coordinator. And the closing date for this position is going to be August 7th. And so this position, you can read the full job description online if you go to our city website and go to jobs right on our homepage. It'll take you to this posting. But it is a new position. And so with the new positions, it's going to be starting up a lot of great programs and new initiatives for the city to include taking a look at our community development block grant program. So like I mentioned previously, we are currently part of the Thurston County Consortium. But we are looking into potentially becoming our own entitlement community, very much like the city of Olympia. And so this requires oversight and administration of the city if we are to move in that direction. So this position would be taking a deep dive and looking into what that kind of transition program would look like. In addition, overseeing social service programs. So I talked about some of the direct social services that the city provides, and then also some of the contracts and grants that the city provides through social services. And so this individual would be overseeing all of that programming, including future social service grants and initiatives. And so one thing that was identified in the work plan is to take a comprehensive, holistic look on creating a transparent and accessible way to access city grants. And so that is something that this position will be also doing a deep dive into. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions about this position or any of the social services that we reviewed. And I do just want to reiterate one more time that the position does close August 7th, and be happy if you passed out information on this position.
I can't read that salary. Did that say 250,000? What did that say?
So it not quite.
Closer.
I just have a comment, not a question. This is quite an education as far as having a better understanding of the broad range of social services provided in the city of Lacey. I knew about some, but it was minuscule compared to what's there. I don't know how you get the word out or how you blow your horn or how you expand your outreach or information to the community so that these social services can be accessed. But you're doing so much more than I think, well, I'll speak for me, and the average person had any idea. And so I applaud it, but what can we do to help get the word out to the communities that we have more direct communication with? That there's a lot going on in Lacey and things that people can be proud about, and the resources that are being provided as we grow, as we expand, as we continue to diversify. So I'm praising, giving accolades.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Jackson, and we'd appreciate any help getting the word out. But we also recognize that this position will be really helpful in also doing continued outreach to the greater community and also engagement efforts as well.
Good.
And I will make sure that I send out a copy of the presentation as well in my follow-up to you all, so you have that information. And if there are questions that come up about any social services or programs, please let me know. I'd be happy to answer them. And Kelly.
We also have a burgeoning community resources page on the website that you can go to, and it has a lot of the community resources there. We've tried to think of everything that we can to put up there, but if there's anything that you recommend to add, let us know.
Or highlight some of the projects in the Lacey newsletter that comes with your utility, just different things.
But earlier on, I think we had asked a question about, is there such a thing as a resource directory? Remember, and the answer was no. So it sounds as though Lacey's coming closer to having a resource directory. It might be electronic and online and all, but the average person, new to the community, looking for different services, where do you turn, where do you look? So a resource directory is one of the things we've identified that would be very helpful.
And so with that, I'll highlight what Kelly was talking about with our community page, but also to recognize that we are still working on our community connectivity analysis, which I think will be helpful in continuing those conversations. So Kelly, do you want to walk us through how we would navigate this?
Yeah, so at the top of the page, if you click on resources or to hover, and we click on community resources, this takes us to our page. And this is our collective repository of all the things we could think of that someone who lives in Lacey may need. And this is all in text, so it can be translated into any language, and we can use the accessibility tools in the lower right-hand corner. So can we translate that to Korean? And so the translation software is never going to be perfect, but it's there. And if we wanted to increase the font size, we could do that by clicking in the lower right. And there we have all of our accessibility tools to make this text easier to read. We have lots of great options here.
That is super. It's looking really good.
Has this been auto translated or has this been like proofread by someone professional?
So this is an auto translation. This is a tool that is just available on the site for any text. When we do publications, we've been translating like our water quality report. That goes to a professional translation service. But this is an auto translation because we have over 200 pages of information. So it's a starting point.
And so as Kelly was pointing out, you know, we are aware that when you use the Google Translate tool, it's not going to be a perfect translation, but hopefully it can provide enough information to get somebody pointed in the right direction where we can possibly provide them better information. And so, you know, the Google Translate, you know, again, it's not going to be 100% correct, but we are taking a look at, and as part of, you know, our draft diversity, equity, and inclusion strategic plan talked about language access. And so certainly future conversations are going to be, you know, what is going to be something that we want to prioritize translating in languages commonly spoken here in Lacey. And so one of the things that we have prioritized, like Kelly pointed out, was our water quality report. And so that is available in multiple languages. But we'll have continued conversation again on kind of what is the priority moving forward for certain documents of the city, in addition to having this feature available on the website. But one thing I want to point out here on the site is it says, are we missing a great resource? Please send it to Public Affairs. So if you go to navigate to this page and you toggle through here and you're looking at schools, utilities, transportation, first responders, libraries, senior services, animals, service members and veterans, local attractions, regional government, outreach services, courts. If there is something else that should be up there, please don't hesitate to send us an email and we will take a look at it and see if we can't get that information up on the page.
Partnering with chambers. I know, you know,
Yeah.
I'm looking for a hotel or something like that. Like I just came back from out of state. I was in Astoria, so not really that far, but you know, I will go to a chamber and also kind of take a look at that. And maybe you guys can maybe backlink to one another.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely. And we do have links on other places on our page to the chambers, but we can certainly make sure that we have something here on our community. That's a great thing to point out, Commissioner
Write
Hart.
that down. Sections.
So happy to hear if there are other things too. I know you're just taking an initial glance at this, but if there's anything else that pops up right now, we'd be happy to take a look at it.
Great.
Yeah, you may have that in business section, but yeah, the business opportunity or business prosperity, something like that. There's a BIPOC Chamber of Commerce, chance to do business with state. Maybe we want to point that out as well.
Book source.
Christine has her hand up.
Go ahead, Christine.
Now I have to remember what I was gonna say. Oh, Shannon, is public health included in social services for the city of Lacey? Because I think it's kind of like all one thing with Thurston County, not all one thing, but it's, you know, there's a Thurston County Public Health and Social Services Department. Like,
Sorry, go ahead, Commissioner Silver.
yeah, so this new position, I'm just wondering, are they gonna work in, you know, partner with Thurston County's public health department? Because there's a lot of, you know, we always talk about numbers and data. There's a lot of numbers and data about health disparities as far as like race and ethnicity and gender and just everything, really specific to public health. But I didn't see a ton of that except for what was available for veterans, but I know like you didn't put everything in there. I just don't know if this is going to be, because they're pretty connected, public health and social services.
No, absolutely, Commissioner Stolberg, and we do recognize Thurston County, public health provides a lot of services, and that we do envision this position will be working with a lot of our community and nonprofit partners. So it'll be between governments and municipalities, nonprofits, service providers. So certainly there's going to be a large degree of collaboration externally as well as internally. So this position will be working a lot with several of the other positions that I just mentioned, our sustainability coordinator position, our housing coordinator position, as well as, potentially our parks and public works as well. Recognizing that everything is connected to everything, to quote Grant Beck, our development services interim director.
Yeah, and there are 9, you probably heard of it, the accountable communities of health within Washington State that are funded by Medicaid. And there's one in Thurston County that I don't know, I haven't seen that on any list anywhere of ours. So that just might be another resource.
Great, thank you, Commissioner Stolberg.
That it?
That is it for
Thank
social
you.
services overview and the Lacey Veteran Services overview.
Thank you, three of you so very much. So much information, great information. So good, good. Great. So we'll move to our next business item, which is the LGBTQIA plus community forum and community engagement that was held recently. Shannon, you're going to introduce it?
I will defer actually to
Okay.
Vice Chair Clay if you want to start off with kind of a general overview. And I've got some information based on the staff report that was provided in your packet, but I'm happy to jump in after.
Yeah, we had a great turnout. We were all there and was a very talkative group. I thought we got a lot of good feedback. I was disappointed that the youth, we didn't have more youth voice, but it makes me want to have a youth forum, maybe that would be directed by the youth council or something that we could partner with them. But that I really want the youth voice more in what we're incorporated in our work. It was good to have the 3 of the council members there, very well spoken people. And to partner with the library, that worked very well, felt really comfortable there. And I think I was happy with the feedback and the turnout. Any more? Yes.
I thought it was interesting that with this additional forum, one of the early issues or questions that came up had to do with North Thurston Public Schools and the issues our youth are facing. I found that interesting.
It came up there too.
Came up, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It gives us,
I'll just stop at that.
more
But
reason
the
to.
idea of a youth forum, I think, has a lot of merit that warrants some additional thinking about and specifically our youth in the community.
Yeah, giving them a space.
Facilitated by youth.
Their own space.
Yeah, their
Yeah.
own space, their own whatever, because it's obviously a disconnect between where adults in the community think youth are and where the youth in the community think youth are. And so
Yeah.
we heard from the youth and they had a lot to say. When we jointly met with the Youth Commission, but we haven't had a youth community forum of our youth facilitated by youth. That would be quite interesting because we have some really talented youth with some very strong leadership skills that I think could do a fabulous job on that.
So on
They're
that,
going to come to our adult stuff, but they might come to a specifically targeted youth forum.
that was the message.
So on that note, Commissioners, I'm glad you brought that up because as part of our Lacey Youth Council, and we are, we just closed the recruitment and we're moving on to applications and interviews here shortly. So, in a 2 months time, we'll likely have a new Lacey Youth Council member here on the Commission on Equity. But something that Sadie Siglin, the management analyst who is overseeing the Lacey Youth Council, is looking to coordinate here in the 2023-2024 year is going to be a youth summit. And so what we want to do is identify what's important to the youth council members to have as, potential like breakout groups or conversations of topic for that youth summit. And so certainly we're keeping that in mind as we evaluate what that looks like. And, I think if there is the question of equity, if that is a priority that raises, to the top, that could look like a, youth forum at the youth summit, or it could look like having that conversation outside of the youth summit. But something we're also looking to do with the youth summit is partner with our human resources department to really be able to connect youth with jobs that are coming available, not only at the city, but in the greater community and kind of, what it looks like to go through like an application process, interview process. And so really doing that in tandem. So it is a all-day event of having, a youth summit focused on youth initiatives and then also job opportunities here in the community.
Great. Yeah, and one of the reasons why I wished that voice came up is because the LGBTQ youth are feeling very threatened and very not listened to. And I think they need a special place as well as, the youth of color, yeah. So. But great, thank you.
So Commissioners, I'll just do a real quick recap.
Just I have a quick question. What do you mean by a special place? If that's okay, I just don't mind.
Well, she was talking about a wider youth forum. I mean, what did you call it?
Summit, the summit.
Day,
Summit.
anyway, summit.
Gathering.
Gathering. That would be a special time that this was the subject and they were allowed to speak. And I think it's important for youth to know that adults are listening to them as well, so that and the issues are different for LGBTQIA people, are Black and African American students, they're facing some different issues in their schools or in the communities.
So you'd set up a special place for any type of group of person? Is that what you mean? Like, because I'm just trying to understand how that's inclusion. When you set up a special place for somebody else, for a specific group of person, I was just wondering how that makes everybody feel included. And what it sounds like you're saying is this would be catered towards a specific group of people. And I just wonder how that reconciles with inclusion.
Yeah, it is similar to our forums where we're asking particular communities to give us feedback so that we can pull it together in our work on the DEI and the commission and the policies with the city and stuff.
Yeah, anytime you're trying to gather, feedback from a particular, group of citizens, there needs to be a part B or a second part to it when you identify that you didn't reach all of the constituents or the people that you were hoping to reach. And with this forum, we didn't have youth there. And we know that the community has LGBTQU. We have.
I get it.
The alphabet.
No, youth in the community. They weren't there. So should we ignore them and move on? No, we should look for opportunities to get them included as well.
Yeah.
As to our inclusion.
I totally.
That's all we're trying to do.
Yeah, I heard you.
Yeah. Now, as far as that, the event, I saw that we were consistent with the feedback from the participants in that they find a lot of positives with Lacey. And they talked about Lacey being an inclusive community. Some of them were new to the community. Others had lived here 20, 30 years ago and returned and were happy to see, you know, the changes and the degree of inclusion that Lacey does have. And of course, there were some that said there were some issues, that they didn't find certain aspects welcoming and some things that Lacey should work on. And that's what the forum is all about, to be able to get both sides of it. If we got all positive, we're probably not moving forward. So we got both sides of it. So we know what some challenges are, and I'm sure with the feedback, we have some questions that are, you know, being asked that we need to look into. And so I just thought that was consistent from African American Forum. It was, you know, here as well. You get both sides of it, but overall, I left with the sense that, wow, they're pretty happy with the city of Lacey and how it is, you know, a welcoming community. They're very comfortable, you know, in this community. So.
But when we talk about the youth as a target group that we want to assemble, where they feel comfortable, where they say what is a comfortable place for them to be, the same as the Black community identified the space they wanted, the LGBT community identified the space they. So do we ask the kids, if we brought you together in a summit, where would you like that to be?
Right.
Where would you be most comfortable? Where do you think we could attract the largest number of a cross section of youth in this? It's that kind of thing. So
At the pizza parlor.
Huh?
At the pizza parlor, yeah.
That might be the
I
answer.
know.
Where we have to roll up some pizza trucks or wherever they are.
Yeah.
But it's their input to make it their
Right.
place, but we can maximize the input and the information they provide to us, other than we adults deciding where that is, what that is, or what it looks like. So that's the focus on youth when we say youth summit from my point of view. And that's all youth in the community, no matter what descriptor they use for themselves. But youth, I don't know what, 18, 21, y'all come, whatever. And so that's a great idea. I know it has to be flushed out, talked about, but we need to pay attention to the young folk in our community, because the community will die if everybody grow up, move away, and don't choose to live here and raise families. So the future of this community lies in the young folk. So we want it to be, you know, we listen to the seniors, and they had some concerns that no other group had raised. You know, so what about our young people? The inspiration, the inspiration card, the first one you shared. You know, the youth, the
Yeah.
seniors, and the people in between. That was perfect. So I'm excited about the possibility of a youth summit, whatever we want to call it.
Yeah.
And all of our youth be encouraged through whatever mechanism to come on in, would be it 22,000. If it be pizza, so whatever.
Yeah.
But it'll be their thing and structured in such a way where we really get to the soul and heart of, you know, we're talking about suicide among veterans, but suicide among youth is just alarming.
Yeah.
You know, homeless youth and youth in the foster care system. How are we falling short as a community to see about our young people? And so therein lies the future.
Yeah, Commissioner Jackson, I think, you bring up a good point of being youth-led, and that's why we want to use the Lacey Youth Council to help as the advisory board of the Lacey Youth to help direct some of that, and then also recognizing that might also mean getting input from other youth members beyond the Lacey Youth Council, but it is a place for us to start at.
Is there a way I can get a list of the target demographics? Like I've heard youth and I've heard Black. Is there other target demographics that you feel that you're not getting input for or, I mean, is there some way that I could understand like more whether or not I would be considered an LGBTQ plus person or a Black person? Is there a way for me to get more of that information? I mean, maybe not right now, but later. This might not be the specific perfect time to ask that question, but I mean, while it's on my mind.
You mean demographic information of the population?
I mean, no, not particularly that. I mean, I can go to Lacey website and see, you know, the census, you know what I mean? But like you're saying, I don't believe there's a way for me to, you know, I mean, you're specifically targeting youth, and like you said, Commissioner, I'm sorry, what was your name again?
Brent,
Right, that you, once you identify a need, like with the youth, that you need to pay attention to that. I was just wondering, like, if I could get an idea of where the diversity inclusion board feels those specific needs are. And you know, because I mean, so far, I haven't heard anybody mention any group that I would associate with, and I feel as though I'm not being heard in this community as well. So maybe there is a special place for me to be able to you know, voice my concerns, but I haven't heard it yet. So if there was, you know, just, you know, I mean,
Well,
this is my first time even hearing that there are specific target demographics that you feel as though you may not be heard from.
You could go back in our, on the website, back in our meetings from the beginning. We had 2 general forums for the general population. And we had one in person, one on Zoom, one on the weekend, or, you know, tried to get some time. We've asked, we put out our questions a number of times. We then met with seniors, we've met with Black and African American Forum, this forum. There's a disabled, differently abled one coming up. There's one about languages, immigrants.
That's kind of, see that how you're listing those things off? Is there a way that I could find a list of those?
Well, that's basically it. So.
Oh, okay, so I basically got the list, or just here, I could just look at this. And that's where you're.
And you can always email us with any issue you have, any feedback you have. It always, or come to the meeting, and usually the public part is in the beginning, but.
Sorry if I'm out of line for asking the question directly, but I mean,
Let me try to answer you this way. We've tried to identify people who feel marginalized in our society that don't ordinarily participate in traditional information gathering sessions sponsored by governmental institutional units.
Right, I would put myself in that group,
Okay.
but I don't know exactly how y'all would, you know, if I have to be LGBTQ plus to have a special place, I'd like a special place for me instead of, I mean, I haven't, what you've mentioned doesn't, you know, represent me at all, you know, and at least as far as what I understand, maybe I have something to learn about these other communities or something,
but understand this, our role is not making policy and acting on all of the feedback and everything we have. Our role is to gather information, okay, learn, you know, what the city has to offer, evaluate that, make recommendations to the city council on areas that we can impact. And we're trying to be all inclusive in that each of those forums we've had, everybody's invited. If you see photos from that, it's for the African American Forum, we had a very diverse audience. For the LGBTQ, very diverse audience. It's not exclusive. The information is put out through the communications chain, through all means, to the entire community. But there's a focus, and so you can feel free to participate, and then it's up to you as an individual to see where you identify and where you can have an impact to participate. And like we mentioned already, that the ways to share or participate or ask questions is through the public, comments portion, or city, being here and listening and being able to provide feedback after the fact. So we want to be all inclusive. We're not being exclusive at all, but we don't make policy. This commission doesn't.
Yeah, no, I didn't think you guys made policy. That's why that wasn't my question. Like, what policy do you guys make?
Yes.
No, I mean, yeah, no.
Yeah, so we're gonna get back on track here so we can get through the couple of agenda items. So Shannon, what else did you have
So
on
I've got
this?
just an overview of the community forum, and the reason I wanted to provide the recap of some of the comments that are expressed for our specific questions is to make sure that I've captured everything that was said at the forum. And so certainly wanted to really quickly run through it and see if there's any additions from commissioners that I may have missed when I was taking notes on the forum itself. So just really quickly, just to kind of provide a recap of the forum. So we held the community forum on July 12th. We had 34 attendees at the forum itself. We also had 14 individuals take the online survey. I do want to recognize, though, that what is provided in your packet does not include the information from your online survey because that closed late last week, which didn't give us a whole lot of time to get the packet out for review this week. So we will be sending out kind of a supplement to it as we continue along. So in the staff reports, we do have an overview, and all of this is directly provided from that, but we, again, provided kind of the general history of the Commission on Equity, what kind of work you all have been doing from 2021 to 2023, and then jumped into some of the questions that we have provided at all of the engagement and outreach sessions that we have done as the Commission on Equity. And so under the comment of how can we create a welcoming community, some of the sentiments that we heard at the forum were around creating a pride event, expressing appreciation for the city putting on this event, getting more information out on how to volunteer and get involved into the community, as well as what's going on just generally in the community. Concerns about the lack of diversity with candidates for public positions, and also that there is a knowledge gap on how to run for office or to volunteer. That visualizations in the community are important. This includes signs, flags, welcoming signs were discussed about having welcoming signs coming into the city in multiple languages and also supporting the LGBT community. There were some comments about disappointment with the city's past sponsorship activities, but also appreciation of the city's response, continued collaboration with community partners, creating a place where everyone can meet and safely engage with one another, and then also creating support groups for parents of LGBTQIA plus youth and Lacey as an example, kind of a P flag. And so was there anything else under this question that you all would like to add to this list that we're kind of providing a recap that you may have heard as part of this forum?
I think you got it all.
Yeah.
And this was just the first question. We'll go over each one of the questions. So maybe I'll go through the whole thing and then just maybe if you can tell me if there were sentiments that were expressed that you'd like to have added here. What concerns do you have about racism and equity in the community? There were concerns about North Thurston Public Schools and issues youth are facing, involving more youth voices and perspectives, using language that all can understand, plain talk in communities, concerns that there was inaccurate information about a bill that was passed, and that's Senate Bill 5599. More information on how allies can be helpful in the elimination of racial and other inequities in the community. Continue efforts to respond to homelessness. And really there was a lot of appreciation for the opening of Maple Port and the collaboration that was ongoing with other regional partners. There were concerns about the continued impact of historical legacies on the community, including redlining and access to economic opportunities. For question 3, how could we increase participation from underrepresented community members? There was concerns again that there was a knowledge gap on how to run for office or to volunteer. It was also expressed that there should be more youth and child-friendly events and programs. And specifically, I think this was not necessarily about recreational events, but about events like advisory board meetings and forums being child-friendly. There was also some conversation on enhancing participation, really being focused on finding of gaps in representation and putting out concentrated efforts to reach those gaps. There were concerns about transportation access, concerns about language access and providing information in multiple language, and then also enhancing communications on more social media platforms than what the city currently provides information on.
There was one other one, the gentleman that was a single parent that had the kids that was there, and being able to, I don't know if it was more time frame, was that?
We'll talk about it here, youth friendly events.
Yeah.
Okay,
asking for community input, but without providing childcare for
Right.
that made it hard
Okay.
for single parents to come and participate.
Okay, is that what B was?
That was, but we can certainly kind of flush that out a little bit more. But yes, the idea of removing a barrier of being childcare to accessing participation.
Probably adding to, maybe.
So barriers, have you seen or experienced in participating in decisions that impact the community? There was some conversation about enhancing communication efforts by the city. Experiences or barriers to participating to the event that evening. There was a sentiment expressed that it was refreshing to discuss these issues openly, as it hadn't always been the case. And then also enhancing focus on youth voices and participation, particularly holding a forum of youth individuals in the community. And then is there anything else you'd like to tell us? So you can see enhancing communication efforts by the city, and it was stated that reaching people currently is really one of the hardest things out there because there are so many platforms and way to communicate with individuals. And so that is certainly a concern beyond just the city, but just generally speaking about getting information out. Concerns about the safety of transgender and queer youth, making sure to include data and statistics in the forthcoming diversity equity strategic plan, getting more information out on how community members can be involved, concerns about people experiencing homelessness, enhancing LGBTQI events like Olympia Pride Parade, and then collaborating and sharing information with partners. And so that was kind of a quick overview of all of the sentiments that were expressed, but I want to make sure that we've captured it. I know I've heard, maybe just kind of clearing out kind of what a youth-friendly event and removing a barrier to participation is. Is there anything else that this commission would like to make sure is added in this recap?
What was moving to me was Councilmember Miller said while he was campaigning, he went to PFLAG and he heard stories that he hadn't heard before. So the idea, and this goes for basically all of our, not only underrepresented communities, but how much the stories tell us. It's not our lived experience, when we hear a story of somebody else, how can Lacey know each other better? So I would like to put that in somewhere.
As well
Where
as
they talked
the
about,
gentleman that stood up and asked, how could he be more of an ally, what he could do? I think that kind of goes right with that.
I think the more welcoming community is just sharing stories. I'd just put that in there. Personal experience.
And one comment that was made at the end that kind of stuck with me and was kind of relative to the question I asked about the Early Childhood Center. Commissioner Vasquez,
That's good.
Robin,
Mhm.
she said, I hope we can be as deliberate about finding money to build the facility for our children as we are a new police station.
Mhm.
I mean, it's summarized here, but that one stuck out to me. Just the focus we should have on our young people, but we've talked about that enough tonight.
Well, and council members, I do want to say that what's provided here in this recap specifically is from community members that were heard from and not from council members at the
Okay.
event. This
Okay.
was the community. And again, with the idea of capturing the information from the community member to take to the council members. So I just want to make sure that that distinction is clear, that doesn't necessarily, going back to your comment also about Deputy Mayor Miller, that this is really the community, the general community sentiment.
Commissioner Sauer, Commissioner Stolberg, you have any comments?
I thought that was a great event. It went really well. A lot of great feedback from everyone. Yeah, I'm just looking forward to do mine for immigrant community as well. But I thought it was great. Hearing from them, learning from them, it was an excellent opportunity for me as well.
So commissioners, I think one of the questions I'd like to ask you, we've now done a couple of community forums as well as other community engagements. And as we start to think to the next one, which, you know, we're hoping to do sometime in September or October, and I will be asking for commissioners for help. And it sounds like Commissioner Sauer has already volunteered, but we'll certainly want to confirm that.
He's on record.
On multiple places, I think, right?
Yeah.
But thinking to the next forum, are there things that you all would like to have discussions about changing? Because we have done the same pattern and, you know, we've talked about kind of what has gone well, but are there things that you are thinking about maybe that would enhance the experience?
Perhaps we shrink down the number of questions. There, some of them are kind of duplication. There's perhaps we shorten the question rather than, I believe there's 6 of them, rather than 6, maybe we, you know, combine them.
I would say maybe customize them a little bit too for the specific, maybe the specific theme. Because there were a couple that seemed like they were duplicate, but maybe replace that duplicate question with maybe a different question. That may be more, not appropriate, but more in theme, relevant, yeah, with what the theme of the engagement session would be.
Yeah, and then I don't know if we have been like personally inviting anyone, but if we were to have like a youth forum, it would be nice. I mean, I know that we're not like trying to put other entities like on the spot, but like we get a lot of questions like, what is so-and-so doing? What is so-and-so doing? And we're always like, we don't really have an answer. It would be nice if we had some representatives from some of the entities that we know questions will come up, like for in a particular forum. Like someone from the school board at the youth forum would be great. I mean, maybe not, maybe it wouldn't be good, but just an idea.
Someone mentioned to me, I don't know if it was one of the commissioners or someone else, was saying at the end, near the end, there are people in the audience who didn't say anything, that if we give them one final opportunity, they may speak up. We had, as you can see there, the stronger personalities kept talking, but there are others who didn't say anything, and just take one last opportunity. Any invite, if you haven't spoken tonight and you have something on your mind you'd like to share, feel free. Here's an opportunity, you know, to maybe elicit that from some people who are more quiet.
Perhaps we can think about having a smaller group, and then from that group, someone who's comfortable sharing as a, you know, like small group discussion, maybe, especially with immigrant community, the language issue obviously is an issue because everything will be speaking in somewhat of English. So perhaps we can think of that way too, that they can speak, that group can talk, and then maybe the one person report out. That way everybody's input is kind of reflected.
It's an excellent point.
And I think it all comes down to a matter of the cultural relevancy. What's going to best work for the group that the forum is about. And so culturally speaking, what Kim is pointing out is what would work best for the group of immigrants that isn't necessarily necessary for the groups that we bring together. So that's the cultural relevance of the whole thing, to maximize participation and input.
Yeah, and I think, Kim, maybe we should consider the presentation being in more than one language. If, you know, what commissioner's doing it in English, stop, someone repeating it in Korean language, someone could completing it in Vietnamese or some other language. It may lengthen it, but more people will get a better understanding if we're sharing some things in different languages, or at a minimum, the questions we ask ask them in several languages in order to get responses.
This has been fantastic feedback, and knowing that we're going to want to have our next forum in September and October, and Commissioner Sauer, I heard volunteer. Is there another commissioner that would like to work on helping organize this next community forum?
All of you. So I have actually at least one confirmed partner who is the BIPOC Chamber of Commerce program coordinator from Thurston EDC. She volunteered to help because she has a lot of connection in the business community. So she'll help out at least to promote the events and things like that. So
Yeah, we just need a commissioner to partner with you, one of our commissioners.
So think about it, commissioners. I will be sending out a follow-up email asking the same question, but I do want to start getting some meetings together to talk about what that looks like, where it could be held, and kind of the format. So more information will be coming out shortly. So think about it over the evening.
I did want to say I really appreciated the coverage that the Daily O gave this forum.
That's a good
We were on the front page a couple times. I think it really showed that Lacey's listening on what we're doing, what we're up to.
I thought it was funny that one person said, in the Olympia, in the newspaper, whatever should be here. He said,
The media
"That's me."
never shows up.
That was so funny.
I think the direct quote was, "I'm here."
Yeah, well, I want to thank Annie and Haygood, Commissioner Haygood, John Haygood, for all of the work you put into it. It was a good program. You guys did a great job. You just really stepped up and stepped in and took care of a business. It really went well, and that's attributed to you guys' effort.
Thank you.
Okay, so great job. Good. Equity tool overview.
All right, so this is our last business item on tonight, and I will say that we're here tonight just to kind of get the general understanding of the concepts. I've provided a couple of examples, get some general feedback, and this will be something that we continue to have dialogues and discussion on as we continue to move forward this year as part of our work plan. So I will share my screen again here. So just as a quick overview, so like I mentioned, this is informational only, and it's just the initial introduction. We'll have further conversation on it. But this looking at equity tools and equity lens is something that was identified in the work plan for the Commission on Equity under Q3, item number 7, which was research and review equity tools, with the idea that we would continue to do this throughout the remainder of the rest of this year. So what are equity tools? And there is a staff report that is provided as part of tonight's agenda packet, which provides all of this information as well as links to the examples. And we'll go over high level a few of the examples, but not all of them. There were quite a few of them in there. But just when I talk about equity tools, I'm going to use it interchangeably with equity lens. So just recognize that they're consolidated. But equity tools, these are decision-making models used to integrate equitable considerations into new proposals, policies, processes, procedures, and practices. And they are used to try to systematically examine how different community groups could be impacted by a proposed action or decision. And often when you look at the equity tools, they do vary, but they do have some commonalities. They provide consideration of impacts on different social identities, groups, or categorizations. So for example, race, gender, language, sexual orientation, age, etc. There can be a lot of other identities. We've discussed that as part of our diversity, equity, and inclusion draft strategic plan and our definitions. They also provide an emphasis on data and making data-informed discussions and decisions, and then encouragement of community input and involvement. They're really help to inform decisions, and I liked the city of Renton described them as very similar to environmental impact statements, fiscal impact reports, or other risk reports. So they are reports done with the idea of taking a pause doing a deep analysis and asking questions. That way you can make better decisions about actions or policies in the community. So what are they commonly used for? I know I've already described a few of them, but often they are used to try to minimize unanticipated adverse consequences in a variety of contexts, including new proposals, budgeting decisions, policy decisions, programming and event decisions. So again, going back to being a tool that helps you go through and process information to make decisions that minimize unanticipated adverse consequences. What do they look like? Like I mentioned earlier, they can vary. I've provided several examples. However, they do commonly share some elements in addition to kind of that general overview I provided. When you take a look at more of the specificity of sections, they typically require some description of what is it that we're looking at, right? So what is the proposal? What is that program? What is that initiative? What is that capital project? What is the purpose or the desired outcome of that particular proposal? When we're considering it and how we do our research, what should be the scope of that research, what should be included. And a lot of that is what data and data information is available. And I've highlighted data here on this screen to recognize that, you know, something else that is identified on the Commission on Equity's work plan is to be looking at, you know, data in our diversity, equity, inclusion strategic plan, but also to have our mapping tool eventually, which will help with tools like this to be able to pull up relevant data that might be pertinent for making a decision or wanting to help inform a decision. Stakeholder involvement as well as community engagement, and then an analysis including the research on benefit and burden, harm reduction and improved opportunities, what the implementation plan. So part of that is it feasible? Is it not feasible? Conversations on what does phases look like? What does that look like short-term, mid-term, long-term? And then finally, the ability to have a reporting and accountability measure. So what does it look like when we are trying to see what this program did impact? Do we have, you know, something in the future, whether it's short-term or long-term, that we can pull data from to make better decisions moving forward about different programs and initiatives using this tool? A few examples that I provided in your packet include the city of Renton, and I just want to kind of just provide a little bit more information before I go through this list. The first item was their tool specifically, and then the second item was just generally their pages related to the use of the tool. So I've got examples from Renton, Seattle, King County, Eugene, Madison, Roseville, Minnesota, Multnomah, Oregon, and also from the Government Alliance on Race and Equity. What I do want to say about this is these are just a few tools. There are many tools out there, and you can go out and research and take a look at other tools as well. I don't want to say that these are a definitive list of tools, but again, just to start the conversation and to provide kind of a general idea of what they look like. So just to kind of really quickly kind of go over a few of them in detail, but not every single page of these tools. What we're looking at right here is Renton, Washington, and you can see on the left-hand side, they have exactly those elements that they're looking to include in using their equity lens. They've got kind of the set outcomes, identifying and involving stakeholders, determining the benefit and the burden, advancing opportunities or minimizing harm, and evaluating, raising equity awareness, being accountable, and reporting back. And they provide very specific questions to try to get at some of those elements and get more information from when somebody from the city is, you know, maybe potentially having a budget recommendation or a new project that they're trying to start, to be able to answer these types of questions as part of their review process. And then they just give a general diagram of kind of what that process for using this tool looks like. So starting with those set outcomes, going and involving stakeholders, gathering and analyzing data, taking action, going back to that accountability of evaluating the outcomes, reporting back to the stakeholder groups, and then setting outcomes and getting more information and taking that back. Seattle, Washington, got the Racial Equity Toolkit, and it provides really good information on, you know, how to use this toolkit. You know, again, kind of outlining those steps a little bit differently than what was outlined with Renton, but you can see again, it's kind of got, you know, setting your outcomes, involving stakeholders, analyzing data, determining the benefits and burden, advancing opportunities or minimizing harm, evaluating, being accountable, raising racial awareness and reporting back. And then as part of what they provided is also the tool that they are using. So I've just provided a snapshot of it, but it is several pages on what that tool looks like. And you can see again, each one of the areas of those steps is identified. And so for projects that are moving through their planning process, they would use this tool to evaluate it based on those steps and the questions included within the racial equity toolkit. Going to Madison, Wisconsin, there is a pretty robust section on what the tool is and what the tool isn't. And so I think it was really important that they called out that it's not a prescriptive or linear process. You know, we just saw steps, but those steps could look different depending on what the project is and what degree of engagement or outreach is occurring and when that is occurring. But that it can be adapted to the needs, and it just really depends on what kind of project and initiative. It provides some information on what it is. So as an example, it is a systematic evaluation of likely impacts of decisions and policies and programs and practices and budgets on racial and ethnic groups or low income populations. What it's not is the answer. It is a tool. Is that my cue card to wrap this up, or?
At the top of every hour.
Well, the good news is that it is 8 o'clock and these meetings can't go longer than 8:30, so we will not hear another one of those. Maybe that's bad news, I don't know. But it does provide some really good information again on how and what the tool is and how to use it. So for example, it's an intentional pause. It's not necessarily something to bog down or slow down. It's to be intentional and to think about, just like you would with your environmental impact statements or your financial risk statements. You take a second to identify what do we believe is going to be the impact of moving forward with this program or policy. It also provides a really good decision guide on when to use this type of tool. And so I'm not going to go over every single thing that's in there. But just as an example, the first one is, has everyone been involved in the analysis, reviewed the best practices included in step 1? So first, making sure that you're not just jumping in midstream, that the groups or individuals using these tools are provided with a foundational understanding of how to use this tool to move forward with it consistently. Multnomah County provided, again, the questions, the basic questions that they go through, just intro, and this is really about kind of, setting the stage, and then how you connect and do your engagement, how you connect to the place, and then how you connect to process and power. And there's additional questions that go on here, just kind of showing you again the differences between the two. And then they had this really, I think, helpful chart for kind of understanding some of the questions and information that they're getting at. And they call it the issue decision 4 Ps. So taking a look at the people, right? So who is positively and negatively affected by this issue and how? Looking at the place. So what kind of positive place is being created? What kind of negative place is being created? Looking at power. What are the barriers to doing equity and racial justice work? And looking at the process. So how can we be meaningfully including or excluding people, particularly communities of color who might be affected? So just another kind of tool as they're looking at the same kind of questions to think about it in a much more visual decision tree. So that's just a very brief, high-level overview and introduction. But like I mentioned tonight, is just an initial kind of, hey, here's what the tool is. Here's some examples for you all to take a dive in and to look at throughout the course of the next month, because we will be continuing these conversations. But I'd like to pause and just, I guess, get some general thoughts and feedback, I guess, on kind of the initial reactions to these types of tools.
Well, we've been talking off and on about this tool for over a year now, and so to be focused on it right now and see it coming into fruition, and I think these examples will help in our thinking. Will it be on the agenda for next month, so we can have a chance to look at these?
So the idea is, again, to let you all have some time to digest it, go
Right.
take a read through it, and whether it's next month or September, it will be coming back to the commission shortly.
Okay, I think the first stab at it at least, yeah. But this is a good start because we've been talking generally about a lot of things, but this really begins to bring it home, the tool we're gonna use to decide if we're making any difference or making any change in this community. Good, thank you.
Just a little comment, I think it was the Seattle one, the actual toolkit that folks were using had a few check marks, like, okay, this is quick, this is like who it's affecting or something. There were some quick things, and then there's others that looked kind of wordy, like, you know, would they really sit down and go through those questions? So it's something that people are really gonna use and use with the right intention, you know, that's what, obviously what we would like to come up. And then, so the mapping tool is a separate thing. But it looks like we could begin to get that data and begin to plug in some of the information and, you know.
And certainly, Commissioner, a separate two items, but they're gonna work in tandem together, right? So the idea would be that this would be a foundational data set that when you're taking a look at filling out an equity tool, if we move forward with it, that this would use to help inform that information and decisions.
So just to try to understand, a mapping tool would be like, well, okay, we're looking at what kind of impact, health impact, and then we could go, there would be a mapping tool that talked, there was a page on health disparity in communities, and oh yeah, we're putting it there, then that's, so that there's like a database that we're collecting all this information about, and then this is more the tool for a decision or a process.
So commissioners, I do have copies of the four ones that we just reviewed here, just in brief, that I will hand out to all of you. So I will start passing that one out to you. Feel free to take one of each. So each pile is one. So you're gonna want to take one from each pile. Or else you're gonna end up with 4 from Renton.
Oh, I see. Oh, this has, okay.
It's so nice that we don't have to like make up our brand new one. I mean, people. You just steal things from other cities.
So commissioners, it's working smarter, right?
Yes.
Not harder.
Okay, so do we have any other commissioner reports? Any other commissioner reports?
Nope.
Okay, director's report.
Thank you, commissioners. I've got 3 items that I wanted to briefly touch on. The first one is in the email I sent you out, I already broke the news on this, but the Lacey Museum, Aaron and Felicia were successful in getting the grant funding for the oral history project. So they are going to be receiving $15,000 for that project. So we'll certainly be getting more information out on that as it proceeds and moves forward. But I did send you the flyer that Felicia brought to the last meeting so that you all can take a look at that information.
Can I ask her, did she like want specific people specific to Lacey or just anywhere?
So Commissioner, my understanding it's more local history, but I'm certain that Felicia will be getting more information out on what the parameters are shortly.
Yeah, because I took one to a farmer's market and gave one to a farmer, so that would be kind of a good way to kind of take a look and get in a different aspect, but I've been taking them around with me, so.
Thank you. The second item that I wanted to highlight is, I know a few months ago, we discussed the utility wrap project. And I just wanted to let you all know that request for qualifications is live on the city's website right now. And so if you know of any artists who may be interested in recognizing the individuals and organizations that were recommended by this group, that is up and available. And so we will be accepting qualifications here for the next couple of weeks. And so hopefully we'll have a update on, how many artists we received qualifications for and who's moving forward in the process in the next few months.
Where do you get them?
That is a great question. So let me walk you through really quickly on where you can find that information. So if you go to our city's webpage and just go to the homepage, you can go to news and notices. And you can go down here to RFPs, RFQs, RFIs, and bids, and you can select that. And here is where the city posts all of its solicitations. And if you scroll down here, you can see what is upcoming, what is open, what has been closed, what's been awarded, and what's been canceled. And you can see we have our open right here, and we've got our requests for qualifications, artists for utility wraps. And if you select that, you can get the full RFP. And you can also get a briefer overview of the project, and you can move this out of the way. I think I've lost it somewhere. So you can see the full request here and read through all of what we're looking for. And we are looking for artists of all ages and abilities. So please forward it on to any artist locally as well as, anywhere. We've also just again got a brief one-page recap of what we're looking for, and I've got copies of that as well. So you can take that out, and it includes a QR code. So while I've showed you how you can navigate there on the website, you can also just scan this QR code and you can access all of this information as well. Any other questions about that?
Is it pretty simple to complete, like you're saying all ages, but would a youngster be able to figure out like if you're going and you're putting in an RFP or for a contract, is it super difficult to navigate and be able to do?
So it's a great question, Commissioner Hart, and we've tried to really make it as accessible as possible, but we certainly welcome feedback. But as far as the RFQ, what an artist would need to provide is kind of who they are, what they are, 3 examples of artwork, and if they can meet the qualifications or meet the timeline that we're looking for as part of the RFQ. And it's all laid out as part of the contracts. So we are standardizing our contracts with whoever is selected, and it will be an award rather than a service agreement. So it's a much more simple contract than some of our professional service agreements.
Nice, thank you.
May I ask, where is it being announced? I mean, how were all routes that we're doing, trying to reach out, providing this information out?
Yeah, great question, Commissioner Sauer. So we are certainly going to promote it in our social media platforms, but in addition to that, we'll have it on our website. We've also reached out to what we've known for community art groups. So for example, we've reached out to several high school art teachers. We've sent it out to some artists who are in the community. We have our artist Jennifer Coons, who did the Nat and Thelma Jackson art piece. And so that is going to be one of our boxes. And I know they're helping get information out. Certainly, if there's other places we should be sending it to, Commissioner Sauer, I'd love to know, and we can certainly route it out that way as well. But we are kind of doing the broad scope with our social media and then trying to reach out to groups that we think might be interested as well.
I was just wondering if it would be on Washington's Electronic Business Solution.
We can certainly get it up there, Commissioner Sauer. That's a great idea. And we put a lot of our other solicitations up there as well.
Okay, thank you.
All right, well, if there is nothing else on that one, I've got one final update, and that is that at the Lacey City Council meeting this Thursday, it is a work session, and we will be discussing 2 items that the Commission on Equity had previously made recommendations on. So we will be discussing the land acknowledgement policy as well as the advisory board stipend program. And so this is a work session, so it'll just be kind of the general review. And should council decide they want to take action, it would likely occur at a subsequent regular meeting. But I did want to make sure that you were all aware that those conversations were happening this Thursday.
That's Thursday night?
Correct. Yep.
At what time?
So the meeting starts at 6. There is one item before those 2 items. And so I would anticipate that probably will be a 30-minute item. So I would say likely around 6:30. And Chair Brown, that wraps up all of the director's report.
Very good. Good meeting. Thanks to everyone. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Okay, it's been moved and properly seconded that we adjourn. Any discussion, any objections? All in favor, say aye.
Hi.
All opposed, say aye. Meeting's adjourned.
Is that a hand raise?